About now, we are being live streamed. Hello, this is Office Hours, so welcome. I'm just waiting here. Here, let me share my screen. Waiting here to grab the link to YouTube to share with our friends here on Discord. And there we go. And let me move this over here. Give us the space that we need for that. And mark this as red because it bothers me to have notifications. So if you've never been to Office Hours before, let me give you a little intro what this is. So Office Hours is once a week. I'm here to help you out about whatever it is. So it doesn't have to be related to Epic React or testing JavaScript or anything like that. It could be anything that you need help with. I will do my best to help you during this time. And so yeah, that's what this is all about. We do the Zoom call, and I give preference to people who are actually in the Zoom call. And then for everybody else, if you want to ask a question, you can stick it in here in the Office Hours channel, and I will get to it the next time I do Office Hours. And then you can watch the recording on YouTube later on. And I feel like, oh yeah, so the reason that Office Hours is starting a little bit late today, I thought I'd just share this with you, is because I had a very serious security vulnerability on my site where you could literally log in as anybody. So I'll just describe that really quick, just because it's kind of fun. So actually, I've got a how I built a modern website in 2021. And down here, I've got the authentication flow diagrammed out. Here it is. And so when you submit your email address, it hits login, we generate an encrypted token and send an email. I need to update this because I also put that token in your cookie. And it's an HTTP only cookie, and so I thought that was safe, but I didn't think about the fact that even if it's HTTP only, doesn't mean that you can't access it. It comes as part of the header, the set cookie header. So you can see it, and it's just a base 64 encoded string. So you unbase 64 it, and now you can see the JSON that's in there, which includes your email address and the magic link with that cookie. And so somebody this morning showed me that you could just enter anybody's email address and then look at your cookies, unbase 64, encode it, and then you'd see the magic link and you just click on that and not have to go into your email or somebody else's. So I was able to successfully log into my own without my own account without going to my email. I could just use that to get the magic link. Not good. So what we do now is very simple. We still do the exact same thing, except we encrypt the magic link in the cookie. So you can see it, you can see that magic link, but it's encrypted. And so you'd have to know what my secret key is, which is just set as an environment variable. So you'd have to break into my server to get that. I don't even know what it is. I typed a random thing. I randomly generated this long string. And so if I ever needed that, I wouldn't be able to get it. So, yeah, because it's actually, you'd have to break into my server and then run within run some code, execute code within my server environment, because I believe that Fly also encrypts environment variables. So I don't know exactly how it works, but anyway, that fix was deployed, and that's what delayed our Office Hours this morning, because they told me about that with like 5 minutes to go on Office Hours, and I got it fixed in just like 2 minutes, like a minute. It was very like the fix itself is actually really simple. If we go to the commit, I have this utility for getting and setting values in the session, and so instead of just getting it and setting it directly, I encrypt it when I set it, and then I decrypt it when I get it. And yeah, pretty easy, and you can take a look at all this. It's all open source and stuff. So anyway, that's why we're a little bit late today. Kind of a fun thing happening. This is what you get for rolling your own authentication. But actually there's somebody in the Remix community who's taking this authentication. Actually, I'll just show you KCD auth, or let's see, Remix auth. Yeah, in this pull request, they're taking my authentication strategy and calling it the KCD strategy. as part of Remix Auth. And so I will probably eventually just use their thing. And I let them know about this significant security loophole. So they will add it, and then this won't be a problem anymore. And then I will technically not be rolling my own auth. I'll be using a tried and true library. Okay, cool. So let's get to office hours. So like I said, I give preference to people who are actually in the Zoom call, and then I've got Discord here as well. I know that Naresh and Mithi both have questions. So I think Mithi, you asked a question a while back, so I'll try to get to yours first if I can find where things were. So I think I mentioned it. Yeah, let's see. I'm just trying to find where my last office hours was. Yeah, so this is my last one. So this is the starting office hours here. And Mithi, I'm guessing it seems like you've had a couple of changes to your question. Do you want to just ask me over the Zoom call right here, or do you want me to look around at the questions that you've asked? And it looks like you're either having trouble unmuting or you'd rather not. So that's fine. I will take a look at this stuff. So yes, great. So you wrote this article. Oh, yeah. Hello.
Hi, sorry for I had a problem unmuting. So
Yep, okay.
yeah, I think I rephrased my question. I think I'm the last one who put the question in the Discord. So the most recent message, I think that's the latest my most rephrased question. Yeah.
Okay, because I remember you were asking about this blog post I was going to review for you. Do you still want me to look at that?
Yeah, I do, but I feel like maybe it's just gonna take a lot of time because it's pretty long. So
I see. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So
I'll just answer this, and then maybe if we have time toward the end, I can take a look at that blog post. So I'll keep it up to remind me. Does that sound good?
okay, thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, go ahead.
So can you see the question?
Uh-huh. Yeah, so
I have this is my second question. I have the question before this. Yeah. So this one.
okay. Great. Yeah,
Okay.
I'll take a look at that.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, the most important thing you think about before you write React code, if there's anything you want to think everyone to think about before they write it, what would it be? I'd like to ask permission to quote. Oh yeah, sure. You can totally quote me and whatever, as long as you are accurate in your quotation and don't leave out any context that's important, and you cite me properly, I guess, then you're always welcome to quote me. So yeah, and I like to be, I like people to let me know when they're quoting me on stuff, because it helps me to take a look at that and stuff. But yeah, so stuff to think about, important things to think about when writing React code. I mean, we talked about a security vulnerability that I fixed this morning, so I guess security is important. That wasn't React code though. Yeah, let's see. So there's not like a checklist that I have when I'm writing React code. But I think I'm primarily thinking about my primary users of what I'm creating. And there are two users, the developer who's going to be rendering my React code, or maybe it's a hook, and so calling my React hook, or the end user who's going to be interacting with the DOM nodes. And so that's kind of what I'm thinking about. When we're thinking about the end user, we're thinking about things like accessibility, and usability. Often we're probably implementing a design of some kind. And so thinking about implementing that design appropriately, to the design specification. And hopefully that design is accessible in itself, but designs don't cover everything with accessibility. So we're thinking about keyboards and mouse accessibility and stuff like that. And yeah, and then from the developer standpoint, we're thinking about how to make a nice API for interacting with our component or our hook. Especially this is why we write in TypeScript, right? So that we can make sure that people are using our API correctly and documenting it well with JS doc, especially for things that are going to be reused. Yeah. I'm definitely not thinking about life cycles. I'm not thinking about when this component mounts, I want it to do this, or when these props update, I want it to do this. But I'm thinking about the state of my component relative to the state of things outside of my component. So that's where use effects come in. And I say, oh, well, I want to synchronize the document title with the unread count or something like that. Then we're going to need a use effect. We're not thinking about mounting and unmounting. We're thinking about synchronizing state, like the state outside of our app with the state inside of our app. Yeah. And I guess like when you're presented with a specific thing that you need to do, then or with a new requirement or something, a good thing to think about is this necessary? So don't just accept it just because you think it's maybe a good idea or whatever, but question whether it's a problem that you need to solve. This is actually part of my talk next week at React London, is don't solve problems, eliminate them. And that has a lot to do with just deciding whether or not it's a worthwhile problem to solve in the first place, thinking about the problem tree and going back up, why do we have this problem and why did we have that problem that we're trying to solve? Why do we have that problem? And trying to see if you can just eliminate the entire category of problems by fixing a couple simple things about or changing your approach or something. So yeah, that's something else to think about when facing any engineering problem, is like, do we need to solve this problem? Yeah, so those are a couple of things. Hopefully that is a good answer for you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Absolutely. And since I'm talking with you, I'll just answer this one really quick as well about Facebook. I did interview at Facebook. The interview process was a lot better than I expected. I expected something more like Google's interview process, which is not great. It's a lot of leak code challenges and stuff like that. From what I've been told, I've never interviewed at Google for that reason. Actually, I didn't want to go through that stupid interview process. And they didn't do remote work, and Facebook also didn't do remote work. And so that's the primary reason I didn't accept their offer, was I didn't want to move to California. But how they invited me, they called me around the time that, I don't know, who was it that recommended me? I can't remember. Somebody maybe on the React team recommended me or something. But yeah, I was called by a recruiter and they said, hey, we really would love to have you come work at Facebook. They didn't have like a project in mind specifically. Yeah, they just had I need to close this. Sorry, I've got my logs open for my website, and I'm just getting like a ton of logs like this, where people are making a request for /blog/f_auto, which is like f_auto is a query or a transform that you can do for transform that you can do. Sorry, one second. I'm just going to move this. How do I get rid of that? That's really annoying. I don't know how to get rid of that. It's a transform you can do with Cloudinary. And they should never be requesting that from me though. So it's so weird, but I'm getting a lot of these all of a sudden. So I need to figure out a way to get rid of this, or like redirect. I don't know why why they're making a request for that on my server. That is very, very odd. Probably could do a redirect or something when that's happening. if anybody experiences this would what you will see if you experience this is one of the images will not load. It'll 404 on you. So if you ever see one of the images on my site 404 on you, take a look at the source of it. And if it's trying to resolve to my server, then let me know and maybe we can figure out why that's happening, because yeah, that should definitely not be happening. But anyway, I'm going to just move this over here and I'm going to stop following it because it's very distracting. Okay. Yeah. So back to the interview process. Yeah, we did like a phone interview and then I came on site and everything. And I said no, because California. Yes. Okay. So you're wondering about the interview process. What was the role? Yeah. So the interview process, like I said, it was, they called me, asked me like, 20 minutes worth of questions about web dev. It was like 4 questions from the recruiter where she was basically just reading off of a script and had some basic understanding of the right answers and stuff. So it was just like a call screen. And then they invited me to come on site for a full day interview that consisted of 4 interviewers, 4 individual interviews and a lunch. So I had like 2 1-hour back-to-back interviews, lunch, and then another 2 1-hour back-to-back interviews. And yeah, they involved like one of them was a design thing. So like we have this layout, let's imagine Instagram, and you've got images that pop up and they're different sizes. I think actually the example they used was Pinterest, actually, because because Pinterest has like this wall where everything can be different sizes and stuff. And so how do you lay that out so that as the user is scrolling, you make sure that things don't get wildly out of order, because as things have different sizes and stuff, you can't just say, this one, that one, that one, and then, order them with 3 across and the next 3 across and the next 3 across, because you could have a couple on the left column that are super short and a couple on the middle column that are really long, and then they show up in wildly like what appears to be the wrong order. So like finding out a good way to lay things out so that it appears in the right order. So that was a very interesting question. I don't know if they're still using these questions. This was years ago, so like 6 years, 5 years ago, something like that. So if they're still using these questions and I'm revealing them all to you, that's on them. So that was one. It was a really good, interesting one. Another, as part of that one, we also talked about architecture and like how we would architect the things to optimize for data loading and everything like that. So that was kind of interesting. We also did like we want to render a bar chart. How would you like specifically do the CSS and HTML structure to make that chart work with different constraints? And then we've got like another interview had lots of data. We need to process it in a really fast way. Like it was all very practical. Like, this is what I did the other day. Why don't I ask you about this? Like really practical sort of interview, which I really appreciated. The lunch was very laid back. I had lunch with Christopher Shadow, and he took me to the roof of Facebook where it's really cool, actually. It was a really cool campus. And yeah, that was pretty chill. He just told me what he likes about working at Facebook and living in California, because that was the biggest thing for me, is I didn't want to live in California. And what was the role responsibility you were supposed to do if you accepted the job? So at Facebook, at least when I was being interviewed, they don't hire for positions. They hire for they hire an engineer, and then they let the engineer kind of decide where they want to go relative to, or like, within reason for like where they have room. And so the first, I think like 6 weeks or something is the the Facebook boot camp sort of thing, where you spend a couple weeks on different teams and then you get to choose after that which team you join. And so my eyes were set on the React team, because I mean, of course they would be. I have contributed to React Core before, and I've worked with those developers before and stuff, and it would be cool to work with them. But yeah, I could have chosen just about anything. And yeah, and that was my interview process at Facebook. Any follow-up questions, Mithi?
Um, I was just curious about you actually explained the questions they asked you, and I realized that I actually don't know the answers to them. How would you what did you like? How did you study in order to like answer those very practical questions?
Yeah. So the thing with practical questions is it's basically impossible to study ahead of time because you have no idea what things they're going to ask. And so like because your study material is basically everything that you do as a web developer. And so there's nothing specifically that you can study, though I think that a focus on the fundamentals of web development can help a great deal with this, because the fundamentals typically apply across the spectrum of web development much better than like studying a specific aspect of React or something like that. And so, yeah, I think this is actually one of the reasons why practical questions are both good and bad, because if you ask me a practical question, then you're getting a sense of my actual practical experience. But if you happen to ask me something that I haven't like to solve a problem that I haven't happened to run into yet in my practical experience as a web developer, then you're not getting a really good sense of my abilities. And so, yeah, it's a little tricky. I'm not, yeah, this isn't super helpful. Like when we're talking about the LEET code interviews, then at least you can know, like, I need to study data structures and algorithms and stuff. And so you have something specific. But when we're talking about practical things, it's just like, I need more experience. And I think the fundamentals are probably the biggest bang for your buck on the time that you spend studying. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. I
Yeah,
have no more
absolutely.
follow-up questions.
Okay. Yeah. If you ever think of any other follow-up questions or anything else, you can always bring them to office hours, but there's also the Call Kent podcast, and I'd love to hear you on that too. And just that goes for everybody. So
Thank you.
yeah. Okay. And if we do have time, then I'll get to your blog post here too. Okay. So I see Naresh is in here, and I think Naresh, you have also asked a couple of questions in here. Let me just come down and pop up to the top here. We'll get to that later. Sergey, I don't think is here, but I can get to that. Anya is not here. Shrishti, Srishti, yeah. Also, I don't think is here, but I can still get to that later. Yeah, so I think Naresh, you are next. So let me see if I can find I think you asked a couple questions, so I'll get to this top one, and feel free to interrupt me and add any context if there's something needed.
Yep.
So yeah, wait for element to be removed, not behaving as expected. Okay, let me widen this a little bit. And by the way, for Naresh and everybody else, you can actually add syntax highlighting to these code blocks by adding the language. So it was TypeScript. And now everything will be syntax highlighted as TypeScript or JavaScript. Nice. Or you can do as short JS and TS. So just a fun little tip for you. Okay. And another fun little tip, instead of this, you can use the screen export. Have you used that before, Naresh?
No.
Yeah. So this is on my blog under the common mistakes. My gosh, when I'm sharing my screen, Zoom just like destroys my computer, makes everything slow. But yeah, so I talk about this in here. So I'll just share that with you. Using the screen export makes this a little bit easier.
Okay.
Okay, but that's not what your question's about. So let's get to your question. So you got, yes, I know exactly what you're facing, and have a recommendation for you. I think we may even have an ESLint rule for this. Hopefully we do, because this is a common mistake. And yeah, so what's going on here is you're waiting for, yeah, okay, so you're saying this should appear right away. And
that should not even be needed, I think, because the component, as soon as it's mounted, is trying to load stuff. So loading should be right there, and I should be able to just do the second statement.
yeah.
But for some reason, I'm actually seeing when I put a console log that loading is being rendered, but wait for element to be removed is not catching it.
Yeah. Oh, I see. So what you're seeing is wait for element to be removed is saying, hey, I can't find this.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what's most likely happening is, have you tried removing this?
Yes.
And when you remove it, does this work?
No, it doesn't. So
It still
that was
doesn't
my
work.
original code, which was not catching the fact that loading was there and was removed and things were being rendered after that. So I said, okay, well, let me try to catch it first by doing the await. And even that is not working.
Yeah. Okay. So here is, I actually thought this was going to be something else. So I'll tell you that first. But this is not what your problem is, but this is a common problem, and you might face it with this code. So what can happen sometimes is we get a DOM node, and then we say, hey, I want to wait for this DOM node to be removed. But then React ends up reusing that DOM node. So like, and that could be based on the way that you've set up your code. So you've got this div and the text content changes. And so if that's the way you're doing it, that DOM node is never removed, the text content changes. And so what I recommend for this is that you actually use the function form, where you pass a function. It's a callback that that then calls get by text, and that will work just as well, and actually better, because you won't have that problem. But that's not the problem you're having. You're having kind of the opposite problem, where wait for element to be removed is looking for that element, and it's I'm guessing it's saying either or maybe both.
If I remember correctly, it is giving me a full log of what it actually found in the DOM after it times out. And that log indeed does not have loading in it. It is the stuff that I'm expecting to see after loading. So it literally is seeing what should come after loading, but it never saw the loading, so it's kind of complaining about it.
Yeah. So what could be happening, and I didn't think that this is the way it worked, but what because I'm pretty sure that wait for element to be removed will synchronously check first. I'm pretty sure that's the way that works. So let me just double check really quick, because it doesn't appear to be the case here. So let me just verify this, and then I will be able to tell you better. So wait for element to be removed is just a little helper utility on top of wait for. Let's see. Yeah, we do a synchronous initial check, but I wonder if, because it's an async function, it takes this on, it sticks this on the next tick of the event loop. I need to check this, check my knowledge here really quick. So if we've got, just pull this up. So if I have an async, function foo that does a console log blah, and then return thing. Okay. And then I say foo promise is foo, and then console log outside, and then promise then, or actually we can do awaits here now, right? Promise, or whoops, console log, wait the promise. Yeah, that's what I thought. So everything that happens in the body of the function until you hit an await. So if we had an await inside of this function, then yeah, actually, let's just verify that really quick too. Await thing. Yeah, so still. So, and actually, let's do this. Value. And then we'll do a console log after, and then return the value. Okay, so yeah, blah, then we get the outside, then we get the after, and then we get the thing. That's exactly what I expected. So everything that happens before your first await is going to happen synchronously in this as the JavaScript is executing. So when you call wait for element to be removed, synchronously, right when you call it, we create this timeout error that's useful for this a nice stack trace. If it's the callback is not a function, which is the case for you, then we do this initial check and we check whether that element has been removed. And so this is why this is very surprising to me, because the fact that the get by text loading, that's not throwing the error, is it? Or is it? Are you yeah, like are you getting that the error from get by text, or is it coming from wait for element?
It's wait for element that is saying that it could not find the loading, but surprisingly the log that it renders does not have loading in it. It has the full thing loaded after the async call has happened. So it is sort of contradicting what it is saying.
Yeah, it's kind of, well, no. So what wait for element to be removed is saying, so what it's saying is, hey, you gave me a DOM node that you wanted me to wait to be removed, but it wasn't in there in the first place. That's what it's saying. And so like you can't wait for something to be removed if it's not in there already. So that's the problem, is that the loading indicator isn't there. And it never is. Or at least it's not there initially, and so it can't wait for it to be removed. That's actually
and yeah, that's why I put a console log on the loading indicator, and it says that I'm going to render it.
Can you stick a debugger right after the render, a screen.debug? Put screen.debug there, and it'll log out everything, and tell me if you see the loading indicator in there.
Yeah, I can try that. So I do have the link to the actual repo in there, but I can try it after the call.
Okay, yeah, there it is. Because what I'm thinking is possible.
I think I've tried that though, and it's just not. It's showing me the loading happening. So if I put a console log right there, it does it.
Oh, so if you put a console log in the if is loading,
yeah,
then that log shows up.
It renders it.
Okay, so because that was the other thing I was thinking, is like maybe your React query has been like preloaded with all of this stuff, and so it's never loading. But if you're saying
so that also is in my notes. So I have actually cleared the cache before every test is run.
Yeah.
So
there you are.
I'm kind of trying to corner it from all places, but I just can't get to it.
Yeah. Yeah, that seems strange. So what can happen sometimes is, oh, you know what? It could be that once we have this await, that's making JavaScript wait until the next tick of the event loop before calling this. That seems wrong to me. But let's,
you got to put the await in front of wait, right?
Right. Yeah. You need to await it. But I'm just wondering if we were to do, let's see. Well, of course, if I do await here, then outside is going to happen after the after.
And if you just scroll down a little bit more, there is another use case where I'm trying to use it, and even that one is not working. So,
oh, you mean on the
in the questions? If you look in Discord, so there's a second use case where I'm deleting a node, and then I'm saying wait for that node to be deleted, and that code is not working. So
yeah, that one actually could be the problem I was telling you earlier. If you change this to a callback, then it's very possible that this will work.
Okay, and does query by text versus get by text make any difference?
In this case, I would recommend get by text, The only time you ever use query by text is if you want to have an assertion that is expect query by text, whatever, to not be in the document. That's literally the only time you ever use it.
Got it.
Yeah. Every other time you should use get by, and the reason is that you get a better error message for that. And that's in the blog post that I referenced to you.
Yeah, I'll take a look at that. You don't have to go through this right now. And I'll also try the callback, which I was not aware of.
Yeah, this one is it's really tripping me up. I'm not sure what could be causing that. Yeah, like maybe. Yeah, you may have to pull up a debugger session and step through your test code, which I know is not easy to do with.
I have never had good luck with that.
Yeah. I do have a YouTube video that I have referenced a surprisingly many times, even though at the end of the video I say I probably won't upload this because I didn't think it was all that useful, but I reference it all the time, so I'm glad I did. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah, debug just tests. Yeah, it wasn't. Oh no, it wouldn't have been this one, I don't think. Maybe, yeah, maybe it is. Oh yeah, the one I was talking about that I said I wouldn't upload was one about profiling for performance. That one I said I wouldn't upload, and I reference that one sometimes too. But yeah, this should get you debugging some jest tests, and that might be helpful. You may need to step into wait for element to be removed to see like what it's doing.
Got it. Can you just put a link to that?
Yep, I stuck it just down here at the bottom there.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, you had a follow-up or another question.
Yes,
so
another question.
Look at that. Someone asked you why use effect. Why do you use effect? Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So so why do we put things in use effect? There are a couple of reasons. One simple reason is that there are some side effects that aren't possible until after the render is finished. For example, if you want to interact with the DOM node for something, that DOM node doesn't exist until after React has created those DOM nodes, and it doesn't do that until after your callback is done. So you have to wait until the render has been what we call committed before you can actually do anything with the DOM nodes that are going to be created. So that makes it easy. It's like, well, it's not possible to do it in the function body. But if we're talking about making network requests and stuff, another reason why it's nicer to do it in a use effect is that the render body runs every time there's a re-render, and you may not want to go make a network request every time there's a re-render. You only want to do that when there's a change in the ID of the item that you're displaying or whatever it is. And so the use effect dependency list helps you with that. But even both of those reasons aren't the only foundational reason why you'd still want to put things in use effect.
So this guy's use case was that user clicks on a button, there's a handler for it, and in that handler he makes the call to an API.
Got it.
And so his question was, why would I instead set some kind of state and then use effect to kind of call that API?
Yeah, got it.
And the best reasoning, my analysis was that you want your UI to kind of reflect the state of your application. So instead of directly going in your handler going at the API, why don't you change the state of your application and let the state kind of trigger that API? And what that means is that multiple people can look at the state change and do their thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
More declarative rather than, or more reactive than a programmatic approach. Does that kind of make sense?
Yes. Yeah. That's precisely one of the big reasons that I prefer use effect. Here's the real kicker. Dan Abramoff disagrees with us.
Okay.
He says put it in the event handler. He said events are when you do things. I super disagree with this, and David Khorshid also disagrees with Dan. And so that makes me feel good because David Khorshid is just a genius. But yeah, the way that I feel about it is the same. And for me also.
And what does that? Can you explain what Dan is trying to say? Put
So
your use
what Dan
effect
is saying
inside
is,
the handler?
yeah, like event handlers are for side effects. That's it's like, well, they're for doing something as a result of what the user did, right? It's like reacting to things which would trigger a side effect with respect to what's happening in the DOM. This is like a thing that happens outside of the DOM world. It's a side effect in a different world, which, like, okay, I guess. But here's the biggest problem with this is cancellation. It would be very difficult or just take a lot of extra work to cancel a network request. Let's say the user clicks on the button and then to choose which which item they're looking at, and then before that one finishes loading, they choose a different one. You want to cancel the other one. You don't want to, like, because then you could, if you don't, then you could end up in a race condition where the second one finishes first and then the first one comes in, and now I'm looking at the wrong one. And so you need to have some mechanism for either canceling or at least ignoring the thing that's not the latest. And so if you do that in an event handler, then yeah, that's you can't easily do cancellation. Whereas with use effects, you can. And in my updated version of advanced React hooks, and actually I think it may even be just React hooks, I can't remember now, but I'm pretty sure it's the advanced React hooks. We have our utils here for the use async utility that we build. Oh, and sorry, this is in the next branch. Oh, right. This is now a TS file. In fact, I might actually call it TSX because, nope. Yep, there we go. Okay. So here we have use async. And oh, no. This was in no, this is right. Well, shoot. I lead into it in a lot easier way than I can just like show you and explain it. Let me just think. Yeah, I've got there's an extra credit. Now I've got to find it. Sorry. I think it's in the second exercise. Yes, it is extra credit. Yeah, abort unused requests. Yeah, so this is exercise or extra credit 4. Let's look at the final extra credit 4. Here we go. Okay, so you might recall, if, for those of you who've gone through Epic React, in the advanced React hooks, when we're building this use async hook, what we do is there's this warning that says, hey, you did a state update and after a component was unmounted. This is indicative of a memory leak. That warning has been removed or will be removed in version 18 of React because it was never really correct all the time, and it also was misleading. And the solution that everybody did and I taught really was just kind of hiding the problem rather than like really dealing with it, which I described. I explained that in the videos. I explained what exactly we're doing. But yeah, anyway, in the updated version, we don't even bother with that, and instead we actually abort the request, and it's pretty cool the way that works. So anyway, the way that this works is whenever the Pokemon name changes, so this, you couldn't do this in a callback function like in an event handler. We can only do this in a use effect, or sorry, let me say that differently. You could do this in a callback, but you would have to do a bunch of other extra things like with use refs and stuff like that. It'd be a lot harder. So with the use effect, anytime the Pokemon name changes, we're going to create an abort controller. We'll call our fetch Pokemon and pass that signal off to the fetch Pokemon, which attaches that to the fetch thing. And then we return a cleanup. And this cleanup is going to run if this component gets unmounted or if the Pokemon name changes. And so now I have the ability to abort, and we just totally eliminate the problem of race conditions, because as soon as you change the Pokemon, we get rid of that, we abort that promise. And because of the way that our use async is implemented, we also stick the promise into our state so that whenever there is another dispatch, we check whether that dispatch is coming from the same promise that's in the state. So we always just keep track of the latest promise. And if we ever get a dispatch from a promise that isn't the latest one, then we just ignore it. We don't do anything. We just return the state. And so we're taking care of both of those situations to handle race conditions. Yeah, and you couldn't do that easily with doing things in event handlers. Now, yeah, sometimes it might be useful to just, or you might think it's just easier to stick things in the callback, event callback. You just say, oh, well, I'm just going to set local storage here. You know, when the user hits save to local storage, let's just save it in that event handler. Yeah, like, because the alternative to that is having some state that says, you know, should save or something like that, and then you have a use effect. That I can see why you might want to just do that in the event handler. Yeah, like those discrete actions. Yeah, so like if you haven't yet gotten to the point where you're like, you know what, my state is really complex, let me put that in a state machine, like with X state. And then with X state, you handle all of that stuff inside of there, even side effects, everything goes into that state machine. And then you're just like sending, what are they called? Events to the state machine. And so, yeah, in that world, like this question is a moot question. So if your state is complex enough that you're like, I really want to just use X state, then everything goes in there. But if you haven't gotten to that point, and the user is just performing a discrete action, there's no state that you already have that makes sense. And they're saying, hey, I want to save this to local storage or something. And like, it's not the sort of thing that you really care about canceling. Then that's fine. I guess that's where all the nuance comes in, right? There's never a solid answer, but there's some nuance for you.
Okay. You know, I get it. Definitely. Yeah. So thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you for the question. That was really fun and interesting to dive into that. Okay. My goodness, we've got so many questions and I did start late, but it's already 10:30. So I'm going to see, is there anybody else in the Zoom call who has a question here, or should I just go to Discord? Teresa.
I actually posted my question right under the one you just answered.
Oh, okay, very good. Let me see if I can find the one I just answered. It wasn't this one. It was this one. All right, sweet. Let me take a look. Yeah, okay, so let me pop this open as we're going. I see that this is in the tests. Code Sandbox and tests are, I don't trust them. Code Sandbox does not deal with tests very well at all. So I'm going to, I'll download this and run it locally. If I need to run it at all. Okay, great. Let me take a look at, oh my goodness. My computer just does not like when I share my screen. Next week on my birthday, October 18th is my birthday, and that is the Apple event. I'm pretty sure they planned it that way, and I can not wait. I am so excited for this to finally, because we're gonna get our new MacBooks, and hopefully my MacBook will, like, it'll work with dual monitors, and it will not be screaming the whole time. I don't know. That's my hope, because when that happens, I will probably live stream all the time. But the only reason I don't live stream all the time is because my computer is so slow when I do. Okay, so which test is it specifically that we're struggling with, or which part of this?
That sidebar test right there. It's the only test I put into here.
Well, I see a couple of tests in here. Which one is it?
Either one. That first one would be fine. Neither one of them actually goes through.
Okay. So yeah, we've got our provider. Yeah, render connected initial. Here's our, okay, cool. So I saw up above that you have a wrapper. So you are using the wrapper thing.
Right. And I
for the,
simplified it simply because trying to mock out GraphQL stuff in here is foolish, but we are using it. So I
Yeah.
was trying to split out where these providers are coming in just to make it easier to replace the specific context that we need for the tests. So.
Okay. Yeah, so one thing that I'm noticing that it's possible this is the problem is you're using memory router. And memory router, it can work, but it's very easy for memory router to not work in our tests. And so I strongly advise not using memory router and just using the regular browser router that you're using in the actual app.
We use hash router.
Oh, hash. Well, yeah, then use that one. Yeah, because that yep, there you are. Because that often leads to issues. And JS DOM, it used to not support the routing as well, but now it does. And so anyway, that's the reason why a lot of people would use memory router historically. But now that JS DOM supports routing really nicely, then there's no reason to use memory router. It just makes more sense to use the same router you're using in production. So what I'm seeing here, everything looks fine without spending like an hour getting up to speed on everything else, though it might be really difficult for me to debug. Let me go ahead and see, how do I download this thing anymore? No, how do you download Sandboxes these days? They've changed so many things in this UI. Now I don't know what download. There we go. Boom. So I'll get that installing, and maybe we can figure it out here pretty quick. Okay. So when you say it's not working, can you describe a little bit more, like what errors do you see and that sort of thing?
So it's what I see is different in the code sandbox than what I see in my production environment. In my production environment, it doesn't mount the sidebar component at all in the tests. So
okay. When you say production environment, do you mean your development environment locally on your computer?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. On our servers, it doesn't actually come.
Sorry, I'm a little confused. So when you're saying your servers, that's where you're running your tests, like in your CI or something?
We run them both locally and through CI. So
Okay.
at the moment for that, this particular file is all commented out because it will cause all of the tests to fail in CI and locally.
Got it. Okay, cool.
So, and we just added the auth provider. The theme provider was already in there, and those tests were working before we added the auth provider.
Got it.
We used to get all of our authentication stuff through Redux, which we no longer do. And I have many other tests that use the auth provider, just like this, that all run. This one test file does not run.
Okay, interesting. So there's something interesting about the sidebar and the auth provider working together that just is not happy.
Right.
Got it. Okay. So I probably am going to need to, and sorry, at what point does the test fail, and what's the error that you see?
It doesn't even get to debug.
I see. So the error fails when you do this render.
Right. So at least in the code sandbox, in my environment, it will do the debug, but it doesn't actually give you the sidebar component. And then it goes to the next step where it fails immediately because it can't find the sidebar.
Okay, got it. Yeah, so we're going to totally ignore code sandbox because, like I said, it's almost never correct. Yeah, it's really sad because code sandbox promises so much, and it could be so amazing, but I can never trust it. It just does not work for testing. So let's see. Yeah, let's just add this really quick so that create React app isn't mad. We'll get our test running. Oh, what? Oh, for crying out loud. Okay, well. Huh, that's weird. Object not as verified text. Let's just go up here and where's the verified TypeScript setup thing? No, we'll just return. We just got to get this thing running. We don't need a verified TypeScript setup.
Yeah. There is none anyways.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, cool. So now we've got the test running and
this has been a problem in the past also, where the test never resolves. So it just sits there and runs and runs and runs and never fails.
Gotcha. Okay, so that's weird. Where are those files that it's looking for? That's weird. Okay, well, let's just run the sidebar test then. Okay, and actually I'm gonna do a dot only on this. And we'll just get rid of that assertions thing as well. Yeah, and again, my computer is so slow when I'm streaming, so I'm sorry about that. Okay, well, so let's fix that problem. We'll default this to an empty object, so we can destructure that. Okay, there we go. So we do get, is this as far as you've gotten?
Yeah, that's what I see in my local environment.
Okay, so here we're rendering nothing in this div. So you say that it was when you added the auth provider is when things stopped working?
Correct.
Okay, so if we go into this auth provider, then this does accept children and renders those children just within these providers. And yeah, this actually looks very familiar.
I followed your article.
Yeah, that's awesome. I hope you love it. So yeah, then we've got yeah, the theme provide. Oh, you know what? It's very possible that this is a router issue because the router is responsible for rendering its children based on what the current route is. So let's look at where you're configuring your router, which I'm guessing is in the app.
Yeah.
Yep, here we go. So we've got our router. And on the dashboard route, you render the dashboard, and that's the route that we're defaulting to. So
Correct.
the dashboard, then.
So the sidebar should be outside of that.
Yeah, and actually, you know what? But you're not, you're just rendering the sidebar within that.
So it's above that. It's above the router itself.
Oh, it is.
So it's just above the switch statement there.
Oh, I see. Sidebar. Got it. Okay, yeah. Actually, now that I think about it, the router doesn't even matter because you're not rendering this this app component. Oh, yeah, that's actually the problem. I think so. So here, let's do this. We say route. Here, let's come over here. And if we were to actually say, this is not the way I'm telling you to write your test. I'm just testing things out really quick. I think we're going to get stuff. Pretty sure. It'll probably take a little longer to run too because, oh, routers, for goodness sake. This is what I get for not using TypeScript. Okay, this will work, I'm pretty sure. And then if this does work, then I can explain what's going on and a potential real solution for this. Nope, okay. Huh. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, well, let me try another thing then. Yeah, that was unexpected. I'm pretty confident that the reason that this is happening, well, hold on. Yeah, I'm pretty confident that the reason that you're not seeing anything is because this router is configured to be on the dashboard route, but you haven't configured any routes. That shouldn't matter, actually. Yeah, it shouldn't matter because I'm pretty sure with the router, if you don't configure any routes, it just renders everything until you get to a router thing, and that controls that. So that should probably be fine. Yeah, okay, I'm pretty sure that was fool's errand. We can test that theory really easily by just saying div hello there. Oh, for goodness sake. If that shows up, then my theory about the router thing was bunk. That was nothing. Yeah, okay, cool. So that's not the problem. Let's take a look at the sidebar. We're using with router. You've got the console. Oh, these console logs are showing up. Okay. And then you have this is authenticated. Oh, yeah. Okay. So that's what's going on. Is authenticated is false. And so that's why it's rendering nothing. Yep. That's what it is. If we add is authenticate. Oh, wait, no, you've got auth state already. So we'll see that here in a sec. What? Did I not save? Oh, for goodness sake. Yeah, so we'll see that auth state is authenticated is false, and that's why it's not rendering anything. And so the solution to that, yep, auth state is authenticated, doesn't exist. And so the reason that this is not rendering anything is because
It's getting default props instead of the ones I'm passing in.
Yes. Yep. So you're actually you're passing in props, but you're not using them at all. And then your auth state is initialized there. So yeah, let's talk about a couple of. So actually, let me first. Do you understand what the problem is? Like why this is happening?
I mean, obviously, it's getting that auth empty object there instead of what I've asked it to give it.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So as far as the your auth provider is concerned, it doesn't care about any props other than children. So you could pass it $1 million and it wouldn't care because you're not accepting and doing anything with those props. So like a quick and easy solution is to say, okay, well, let's grab like all of the rest of the props, or we could just say props and pass those props to your state. And then say props.children. I do not recommend this. For one, you're passing children to your reducer, which is not good. But also this is changing your source code for your test code, which you want to avoid doing that because it means that you could do something special for your test that isn't experienced by your user. So your test could be passing because it gets this special treatment, but your user could get like a bad experience. So we do not do this. This is not a good approach. You don't want to change your source code to make your tests have something special for them. So, but that would solve the problem because then we are taking those props into consideration. So the real solution though is to do the actions that result in your reducer getting into the state that it would in the same way that the user performs those actions. And so here you have this auth dispatch that you can use to dispatch the login, so you can pass along the payload for the current user and their token and all of that. And so what I suggest is that, let's see. Well, let me just try and think of the best way to.
Right, because the sidebar has no mechanism for that. That's in the login and the header that do the dispatching.
Yeah, so there are a couple of ways to approach this. So one way is you could do the full integration test route, take that route, and basically what that involves is taking this app component, and that's what you render instead. And so then you don't need to render a router or an auth provider or a theme provider, because those are already all rendered. And in fact, you don't need to render the sidebar. That's also rendered. And then so all you do is you say render the app, and then you interact with just the sidebar. The biggest problem with that for most people is then you're rendering a bunch of extra stuff, which in some cases, like sometimes that could make your test a little slow, or slower than it needs to be. And the other problem with that is all of those components may be making network requests and stuff like that, that then you'd have to make sure those are mocked out. My response to that is you're probably going to want to mock those things out anyway for their own tests. And so like, may as well just do that all in one place and have those mocks set up for every test, and then you never have to worry about it. But a lot of people don't want to do that. And so if you don't want to go with the full, just like render the whole app approach, then there's another thing that we can do. It's pretty simple. So what we'll do is we make a function component here that is our auth control or whatever. This isn't a really super common pattern, so I don't have any like typical names for it, but we're gonna say use auth dispatch, and oh, come on. Yeah, that's what it's called. Bring that up here, get that from our auth provider thing. And then you could do a couple of things with this. You could render a button that you could then click on that would trigger it to load, but it'd actually probably just be easier to say React use effects. You have to return something, so we'll just return null. We don't care about this. And so we'll say auth dispatch with whatever our payload needs to be to log in the user. So yeah, our action has a type and a payload with current user and token. So type login payload is this stuff. And then you get rid of that and stick that here. We don't have the is authenticated. That's handled by the reducer. I feel like I'm missing something. Nope, that's it. Okay, and so then rather than passing those as props, you just have that initialized as soon as it's rendered, and then you just stick that right next to it. And that will get your auth provider into the state that it needs to be for your test to, or for your sidebar to be authenticated. And so hopefully, if I'm right, we should see all of that stuff here. Yeah, so now we've continued on, and now there's a bunch of other stuff going on. Yeah, so now you've got all your stuff. So does that make sense what I'm doing there?
Yeah, so you're triggering the login action and the dispatch in order to then render the completed component.
Right. Yep.
Okay.
So, and actually, because this is a test component, you can kind of break some of the rules here. And if you didn't, well, should I say this? You could say, I'll just show you this, and I'm not necessarily recommending it. Just like, this is just an idea of something you could do. Because one of the drawbacks of using React use effect is that you, when you render, it renders everything, and then the use effect is called and it re-renders everything again. And that's not awesome, right? Like, you don't really notice anything in here that is of any significance, but you can do this. I would not recommend this in app code, but in test code, it's fine. So first run equals React use ref false. we'll call that a ref. And so then we can say if first run ref, and actually, sorry, this will be true, current. Then we'll set current to false, and then do this dispatch in here. And this, what this does is it says, hey, React, actually, I need to make a change to this state. And so it stops all rendering. It doesn't commit anything to the DOM or anything, and it will trigger another render. So your render functions are still called. You're still creating all the React elements and all that. But you prevent React from committing those updates to the DOM. So like maybe it's a little bit faster. But I mean, doing this would probably require a comment to explain why you're doing something weird.
Okay.
And so you can decide which of those approaches you want. But ultimately, it ends up resulting in the same thing. Like we're still getting that render here, and then we get another render. So like foundationally, there's not a whole lot of difference, but it's a fun thing to look at if you want to.
Okay. And then would it behoove me to put that await for, which I have to do for the mocks for GraphQL anyways? Would that help me to get past this initial error state?
Yeah. So let's see. Yeah, I'm guessing these. So that's what these are. Like these icons are coming from GraphQL.
They're not rendered until the data is returned.
Got it. Yeah. So the you don't want to do this wait for promise thing, because what you can do is what you actually can do is even better, and that is you could actually just say await screen.find by whatever you want. So like text, thing that shows up after GraphQL is done, and then you don't need to bother with that. Right?
Okay.
You can say wait for this to be found,
Right.
and then you can continue the rest of your
Right.
stuff.
Some of that is also testing the render before, because we've got similar loading states. So to make sure that before the data comes in, we see this, and then once data comes in, this is how you render.
Yep. So you would you could do all of your assertions, and then when you're done, you're like, okay, yeah, everything, like I've made sure that the loading states are there properly. Now we're going to wait for, and what you could do is you could say wait for, or you have the utility wait for element to be removed, which we were talking with Naresh about that earlier. And so you could use that and say wait for those loading states to be removed, and now I can continue on with the rest of my test and verify other stuff.
Okay.
So cool. Is that helpful?
Yes, very much. Thank you.
Good. I'm glad that we were able to. At first, I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to be able to help here, but digging into it, your example was nice and succinct, so that helped.
Thank you.
And I know that takes a lot of work, so thank you for putting that work in. That makes it a lot easier. Okay, you know what? We're way over time, and I've got some appointments and stuff, so I don't. I will try to finish some of this quickly, but if you can, try to take your question to the Call Kent podcast, because I can answer that a lot easier over time on that. So Anya, I met Anya actually in Croatia a couple weeks ago, and that was a pleasure. So hi, Anya. And I'm going to just mention answering this now on the live stream. Maybe she's watching, maybe not. But yeah, so question, implementing video player and editor for its subtitles. Have a component which uses a redirect use selector, and as it represents the current time of the video player, values change each millisecond, which causes my component and its children to re-render, something I need to prevent. Very understandable. Yeah, as soon as you have something that's changing that much, you do not want it in Redux, period. Just nope, you don't want it there. You need to put it somewhere else. Because yeah, you'll trigger re-renders like up the wazoo. And even if you're using Redux Toolkit and all of the performance benefits that you get from that, you're still like calling a ton of code on every millisecond. That is not good. You need to get this out, put it somewhere else, and that will probably help a lot. Yeah, using that value to calculate something which is not used, or which, yeah, inside related components. So my component is independent of the current time. Is there a memoization of component? The only approach, because it feels has performance issues after I memorize it, like glitches and yeah. Okay. Yeah. So for one thing, memoizing something doesn't mean that there's no cost, because React still does need to determine, do I need to render this? And so you're still like running a bunch of React code. So what is better is if you can take this, this particular state value outside of Redux, and put it in its own little provider. So then you can separate that state from everything else. And so when that updates, everything else doesn't have to re-render or check whether it needs to re-render or whatever. You can just stick with that. And then you consume that provider in the individual components that care about it. And then to take it a step further, if those individual components are parents of other components, then you may need to memoize its children, but you can restructure your components a little bit so that that component accepts props for the other elements that it needs to render. So, and what I mean by this is actually what I'm working on today is updating the advanced React patterns to have an example of this as a pattern. So you can take a look at this. It's basically the idea of layout components. And so if you, I'm not sure about the specific example that we're talking about here, but if the component that's consuming the current time state value, which is going to need to render a lot of times very rapidly, if that component is rendering a bunch of other children that don't care about that value, then you can extract those things out and pass them in as props, and that will prevent those things from re-rendering. If, however, that's not reasonable or something, or maybe they do care, then you can memoize those individual components, and that will still be better than having it in Redux. So that's what I'd recommend. Get it out of Redux first, have it in its own state thing, and yeah, you might run into a challenge where moving it out of Redux means that other things within Redux don't have access to that state value, and they need it, and that can be a problem. If possible, then you can move those other state values to be with it. But then maybe those state values need to be consumed by more components. And so you're basically back to the same problem. And yeah, when it could be that you're in the situation where Jotai or recoil make a lot of sense for your situation too. So I'll just reference those, Jotai and recoil JS. Man, my computer is slow. It's really frustrating. This is it, and this is it. So yeah, one of these two might be a good solution for you also. My goodness, why is this computer so... Oh, I know why, because Apple's like, oh, we're going to release something new next week, so we need to make everybody's computers really slow, so everybody wants to buy our new thing. I don't know. I feel like they have been known to do that in the past. Anyway, Anya, hopefully that is helpful. Good luck. That is a tough one. And you are a member of Epic React, and so you can go to the performance video where I show you how to solve perf death by 1,000 cuts. Yeah, that exercise should hopefully help if you haven't already gone through that. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, okay, so I think somebody actually answered this one. Maybe, I thought somebody did. Okay, well, let me Srishti. I want to say Srishti, but there's no SH at the beginning there, so it's Srishti. Hopefully I'm saying that right. I like to say people's names correctly. Okay, so the question is, we need to pass a message function as the first argument to create elements of API of React. Could not understand the purpose of the extra credit to make us, or I could understand the purpose of the extra credit to make us aware of the fact that React's create element API can take a function name besides the tag name as a string as the first argument, and this function represents a custom component which returns some JSX code or the result of React create element function call. So it's returning an element. So there's your solution. First out is, or question, how is the message function getting the second and third arguments passed to the create element API of React in the form of props. So you could dive into the React source code if you'd like to. And if we had time, I would stick a debugger right before calling react.createElement. And you know what? We've got time. I can do this really quick. Yeah, I could probably even do it right here. So let's do this. Take this out of there, debugger this thing, stick that right there, and then pop open our DevTools and wait for the next like 20 minutes while it forks the thing. Dang it. Okay, so I'll show you how that works. Basically, you pass it to React, and then React passes it to the component. That's all that really happens there. Oh, actually, you know what? That is not going to do what I want it to. Yeah, here. What I really need to do is I need to put the debugger right there, and then step back. Okay, let's try that again. And reload. I'm just going to look at this question really quick while we're waiting for that. Yep, you get it. Yep, these are really good. Okay, good questions. So let me see here. What? Oh, these are my threads. No, I want there, call stack. Okay, so if we look at the call stack, so we're inside of our message component right now, and so we can step back in the call stack to know where this got called. And so this is the React source code right here, where we're calling the component and we're passing the props and this second arg, which is actually legacy context. It's a silly thing. You never really need to worry about it. So yeah, we get the props. And if we go up and find where props is coming from, there's our children hello world. Whoa. Yeah, so this is render with hooks. Yeah, things get actually kind of complicated in React source code pretty quick. But if we, yeah, actually, that's probably as far as we want to go in the React source code, to be honest. And now my computer's like frozen and stuff, so I can't take it any further. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so there's the props. Let's see if we can find those props. Here we go. Work in progress, pending prop. Yeah. See, React does all sorts of really confusing things with like global state stuff. It's really amazing that they managed to do what they do with the way that it's implemented, because it seems super complicated. But basically, React is it takes your the props that you pass to the create element call, and then when it's time for your component to be rendered, it calls that component function and passes those props along. So that's how that works. Now, your question about when is the message function called? That happens when you say React DOM.render, and then you pass an element that your element is a part of. So you can create as many React elements as you want to, but none of them are actually, the functions underneath them are not actually called until they need to be added to the page and rendered to the document. And so that's why you'll notice that like calling create element, just because an element is created for a specific function does not mean that function will be called. It's only when it needs to appear on the page. So yeah, and this, yeah, these were perfectly great questions. No problem at all. Yeah, so hopefully what I showed you there will be helpful. And I will just notify this nice person answered this on the live stream just now. Okay, cool. Let's see if I can answer a couple others before my appointment. Yeah, sorry, Mithri, I'm not going to be able to get to your blog post today. Okay. Yeah, okay. So actually, I think Nick did ask about that. But being able to buy my course in installments, it's unfortunately not a thing that will probably ever be supported. However, you can buy a lower tier and then upgrade to the pro tier later, so you can kind of get it in 2 installments. But yeah, there's no like installment system or anything. Yeah, okay. So Peter's asking recommendation for integration test and unit test file structure. Say there's one file, one TSX. Would you recommend another 2 test file, one for unit test, one for integration test under the test folder? So it's not very often that I have both a unit and an integration test for the same file. Sometimes I will, but not very often. In any case, when we're talking about unit tests, I put them right next to the unit that I'm testing in a dunder test directory, like you're talking about here. That underline is probably because you have 2 underscores on either side of that word, which Discord treats as an underline. So yeah, the dunder test directory, I stick the test file right next to the file that I'm testing. Integration testing is a little more complicated because you're talking about like multiple components all integrating. And what I do for that is there's probably a root component that you're rendering that has all of those components integrated. And so I put it next to that component that I'm rendering. If you're trying to test multiple components all together, but you're rendering them specifically in a special test function or something like that, then you just find the least common parent of all those units that you're integrating, and that's where you put the test file in a dunder test directory there. So hopefully that is helpful. Yeah, okay, sweet. Resetting provider context between each test. Yeah, so most of the time you shouldn't have to. It kind of depends on the way that you've set it up, RJ. Like if your provider context is dependent on some global state outside of React, then yeah, you might have some issues, and you just need an after each to reset that through whatever JavaScript API they have available. But if you're using, if all of that is happening within the React context, for lack of a better word, like within React, then all you need to make sure that you do is each one of your tests gets its own provider. And when you create a new provider, all of that state from the old one should just be gone. You shouldn't have any trouble. Yeah. So yeah, if we're talking about like MSW, well, yeah. Yeah, my guess is you've got some state outside of React that your provider is interacting with. It's going to wildly depend on what that is, but you need to make some sort of API for that state to get reset, and you do that in and after each. Okay. Subrato is asking, yeah, okay. So if you've got this this hook, first of all, I would the first rule of testing React hooks is don't test React hooks. Test the components that use them. However, sometimes the React hook that you want to test is either really complex, so you want to test it in isolation, or it's a library that you're producing, and so you want to test the API that you're exposing. And so in that case, you want to test it in isolation. And I've got a blog post about that I will link you to. Oh, wrong blog here. React hooks testing. My goodness. How to test custom React hooks. That will be useful to you. To show you just how to do it. And then the other blog post I want to share with you, since you talked about calling this read data API, is stop mocking fetch. So this is the proper way to mock APIs, and I will share that with you. So hopefully those two are helpful to you, and good luck on that. Yes, and again, most of the time, test at the component level, not the hook level. Unless they're like it's a really complicated hook, you want to test it in isolation for that reason. Okay. Oh, and it looks like RJ, you've got some follow-up stuff. Okay, cool. I think I'm actually maybe going to get through all this stuff unless we've got another big one. Yep, talk about that. Yes, I just wrote this blog post today. If you have a different CSS file per route, but isn't it easier and better to use something like CSS modules or vanilla extract? As you mentioned in your post, even if you keep your CSS separate on a route level, you still end up having to put the component level CSS in the root, which may cause classes. Yeah, I don't know what more to say than what I had in that blog post. You absolutely can have those CSS clashes, but in practice, for like reusable stuff, you're probably going to namespace it anyway. And so like why? Yeah, that's not a problem. Also, like I say in the blog post, I just skip to the end and use Tailwind. I've gone through it all, and Tailwind is the best. But I realize it's subjective. And so if you really like CSS modules or vanilla extract or styled components, or whatever, feel free to keep using that. I feel like there are significant compromises you have to make when you're using tools like that. And I'm tired of making those compromises. I'm happy with Tailwind. So yeah, even for reusable components and stuff, Tailwind is awesome for me. And so I'm going to keep going with that. And then for like one-off stuff, the fact that Remix makes the CSS clashes predictable just is awesome. I'm really happy with that. So, if intercept an endpoint and end test is good practice. Yeah. Okay. So if we're talking about end-to-end tests, intercepting network requests is not really an end-to-end test. It's end-to-end means like nothing's mocked. Basically. So like you're probably going to want to use some mock version of Stripe or something, and Stripe provides that. But for your own services, you should go from all the way from the front all the way to the back. That's what an end-to-end test is. If you're mocking at any point, then what you're doing is an integration test of everything up to that mock. So everything back from that mock is you're testing the integration of those things, but you're not testing the rest of it. So it's not end-to-end. Does that make sense? And I don't particularly care too much about the classifications, but just to be clear about what we're both talking about here. Yeah, so as far as like, testing a login or something, yeah, like what I do is I literally log in. I don't know. Yeah, I go through that login process, and I'm using magic links. And the way that I do that is I actually mock the email provider so that and save what I would have emailed in the file system, and then have Cypress go grab that, get the magic link, and then send me to the magic link URL. Otherwise, you can like seed the database with some users with passwords that and do it that way. And then for most of your tests, you shouldn't have to do that. You should be able to skip the whole login process and hit an endpoint that just like creates a user for you, which I also do on my website. But none of that is like necessarily mocking my end-to-end experience. So yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't say it's like bad practice necessarily. We got to do things to make things practical. I guess that's all I'm going to say there. Okay. Cypress is wrong. And they've been wrong for a long time, and they have admitted it, and they still haven't updated their docs. But what you need to do is use Cypress testing library, and then you're way better off. But Cypress is wrong, and they know it, and they just haven't updated their docs. Yeah, don't use test IDs if you can avoid it. I should probably make a pull request or something. Maybe they'd finally do something about it, but I don't know. Cypress is wrong. Use Cypress testing library, and you'll be better off. I have actually answered this question about Svelte on the Call Kent podcast, so feel free to listen to that. Yeah, I don't know. That was a long time ago, and I don't have time to look for it right now. But your Twitter searching is probably just as capable as mine. How do we replace Redux with React hooks? That sounds like an entire course. Sorry, I can't answer that in office hours, especially right now. Okay. Is learning Shopify for freelance good or bad? Sure, why not? Go for it. Skills to develop for freelancing. I don't freelance, so I'm not a good person to ask that question to, but we do have freelancers in the Discord, and I would ask them about that in the career channel. Yeah, that would be helpful. I'm sure they would be helpful, is what I mean. Cool. Talk about testing components, which use suspense or are async. I do have a YouTube video about this. So let's see if I can find it really quick, and then we'll be done. I've got somebody coming over in 7 minutes, so I've got to be done here really quick. Okay, so test suspense. Yep. I think that is the one that we want. So this is using React's lazy and suspense. If you're talking about like suspense for data, oh, it needs to be updated. Maybe if this is the one that you're talking about, I don't think it needs to be updated. Like it still works this way. The fact is, you shouldn't actually have to care about like what you're waiting for, because it's all the same. If it's async, you're going to be using the same utilities. As far as the user is concerned, they don't really care whether you're waiting for code or for CSS or for data or whatever. They're just using their wait for brain, right? Like I'm waiting for something to happen. And so the utilities from testing library will be the same. You're still going to wait for an element to appear or for an element to disappear or, something. So yeah, all right, that's it. Thanks everybody for hanging out. This is a great session. It's been like 3 weeks since the last office hours, so I understand why it was a little packed today, but it was fun. And so I'm missing office hours next week because I'm going to be in London, or I think I actually might be traveling home from London for React London. And if you happen to be in that part of the world, then might I suggest that you take a look at my workshops page, where you can grab some tickets. And yeah, it's going to be great. And also I do have other workshops and stuff, TypeScript and Remix and stuff. It's going to be awesome, super fun. So yeah, I hope to see you in London. That would be cool. But yeah, so I'll miss next week. And there's always the Call Kent podcast, and I try to do one of those every single day. So you can go ask any of your questions on here. And I actually prefer answering it on here because it's in a more distributable format than office hours. But sometimes you can't do some things in Call Kent podcast, and so office hours is here. I feel like there was something else I was going to say about this, but I think that's it. So yeah, thanks for hanging out. It was fun. We'll see you all in the future. Bye.